Hey, welcome. It's Christine Envall, educator, creator, and world champion athlete. Today we are talking about sports supplements, the facts. Now, sports supplements is an absolutely huge category now. I did a little bit of talk earlier in the week, and I was talking about back when I got started back in I think 1991 when I did my first competition. And I was just thinking about how back then it was pretty much weight gainers, maybe some amino acids and carnitine, and that was really about it. So between the last 30 years, the sports supplement category has grown phenomenally. Now, to put it in context though, it's still a really tiny category compared to compared to things like vitamins and minerals and herbal supplements, which still make up probably about 85% of all supplements sold. So sports, while to us being in the sports industry, sports supplements are a massive category. They're actually a very small part of the whole what's called nutritional supplement category. Although one of the things that I am noticing is that more and more there's a crossover with obviously more vitamins and minerals being utilised in sports supplements and more herbal ingredients being used in sports supplements. So I thought I would start out by talking about what is a sports supplement. So I'm not going to talk about protein because whilst that's probably the number one product that people think about with sports supplements, to me protein is still not a supplement, it is a food. So when you think about where it comes from, it's either coming from whey or plant protein or basically whey or casein derived from milk or from egg turned into a powder, is literally the same thing as eating the food, just in a way more concentrated form. So, for example, you wouldn't say that if you took the skin off a chicken breast, hey Kimmy, that it is now a supplement because you took away one of the nutrients out of that particular chicken food. So if you're looking at milk and you take out the lactose and the water and some of the minerals, hey Chris, welcome again. It doesn't mean to say that suddenly turns it into something other than really the basic food that it is. So that is why I'm not going to talk about protein powders. We have covered quite a bit of that. I will talk a little bit about it in the context of post-workout, but I'm going to more focus on what genuinely are actually the supplements, which are things which don't really give us a nutritional value as much as what they give us a performance enhancement, which is what we're all looking for with sports supplements. So I had to write a few little notes here because the category is so absolutely vast. So as I said, when I started way back when, bearing in mind that I think Masashi had just started and they used to put out their little single amino acids, so we all kind of got to understand a little bit what different amino acids did, because they broke them up into whether they were recovery or if they were energy, but they were actually quite tricky to use because to actually dose yourself and use a free-form amino acid can be a little bit tricky because you have so much competition going on with hey Peter, everyone jumping on today, good to see. But yeah, there can be competition if you take too much of one particular amino acid because they're all kind of fighting for the same uptake system, or like with like. So it can be quite dangerous, and in other countries a single free-form amino acids are actually regulated like medicine, whereas in Australia they're actually just they're more of a food supplement or a sports supplement, but obviously within controlled dosages. Anyhow, that was back then, and then all of a sudden, sorry, I'm trying to read here. So Kristen saying, I'm primarily into aerobic sports, thus I'm using pre-workout gym fat burns and occasional T boost. I'm going to have to come back to that at the end, Kristen, because the whole message hasn't shown up on my screen. So I will probably answer that either right back at the end if I can get it, or I might answer that in a Sorry, just losing connection there. But yeah, I will talk about the best types of supplements to use for different things. But but I'm gonna just sort of say how with supplements, as I said, up until probably about the early 2000, we were working mostly just with protein type supplements and carb type supplements and really basic amino acids, branched chain amino acids, recovery products, and then the pre-workouts hit, and that has changed the entire sports supplement category as far as I'm concerned, because it started out with these what we call nitric oxide boosting pre-workouts, where the idea was that they increased the blood flow and that allowed you to work harder in the gym, and that category has just grown and grown and grown. So now the pre-workout category has high stim, low stim, no stim. It has pump, it has more energy based. There's just such a degree of product within there, and I will probably do a whole day on pre-workouts, but I do want to talk about, obviously, later on some of the key ingredients that go into those, and whether they're just a load of rubbish or whether they actually do have some actual foundation in what you're using. But just as it stands today, I have really bad connection for some reason today. I don't normally have too much trouble down here. But yeah, so we have obviously pre-workouts, then we have intra-workouts, then we have post-workouts, then we have amino acids, and that can be glutamine, creatine, branch chains, essential amino acids. Then we have carb supplements, then we have endurance supplements, then we have energy supplements, hydration supplements, test boosters, and nootropics. Now, I'm not really going to cover off on test boosters and nootropics on their own today, but I am saying that there's a lot of crossover between what goes in a pre-workout and the nootropics, and we're seeing them pop up in so many different types of products. I'm not going to talk about fat burners because I will do a whole separate day on fat burners, but I will talk a little bit about L-carnitine, because whilst it gets categorized as a fat burner, it is also a really great endurance product. So something for someone who is doing a lot of aerobic work, carnitines are a really, really great product for that, especially if you don't want to use a lot of stims and stuff like that. And again, we'll get through all that because there's obviously so much to talk about. But I just wanted to say that it's very broad. It's been around now for about 20 years. That this whole I hope this doesn't keep on happening, and I hope it's all still coming through okay, because it's a little bit disjointed with the connection getting lost there. So I guess we'll start off by talking about creatine, because creatine is it's the number one researched supplement, sports supplement, and I feel like it's the kind of forgotten supplement. Like, a lot of people really gravitate immediately towards pre-workouts and all those more fancy things, and the ones that have got bright labels and like a million ingredients that sound really, really exciting. But the truth of it is, we remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about energy systems, and we talked about when you're doing different types of activity, how your body is using different energy systems. So a lot of the sports supplements, obviously the whole, the way that they work, you do need to have that bit of understanding about what energy system your body is using at what time to really understand if that's the type of product to use for you in the application that you're actually doing. So coming back to the creatine, obviously what it's involved with is when you're using that energy system, which is the short-term usage, the system where you're basically doing explosive work and only up to a kind of like a 30-second, maybe up to 2 minutes. That's where the creatine comes in to help replenish that ATP to allow you to keep on working. So as I said, there's been over 500 studies over about the last 25 or so years. So when they do an analysis of that, about 70% of them obviously had really, really positive results for sports performance. Now, that led to this belief, I think, that about 30% of people were what they called non-responders, which means that they didn't really get anything out of creatine. However, whether that's actually the truth or not, then that's something where it's one of those things where some people didn't get a lot out of it because it conflicted with caffeine. So they took too much caffeine. The creatine didn't really work. If somebody ate a really high red meat diet, then they already were quite loaded in creatine. However, basic fact is that people who are on vegan diets, obviously not eating a lot of meat, are really going to benefit a lot from having creatine. But creatine is one of those supplements, though, that stripping everything away, it has been shown to actually lead to increased muscle mass, and it has been shown to increase power output and ability to work in the gym in that sprint range, in that explosive range. And that doesn't just mean if you're doing that short type activity. If you're doing an activity like a football match, for example, where you might be working for 2 hours, but you have periods of sprint and then more relax, and then more sprint, more relax. It's really, really good for those applications. So it's a supplement, as I said, that's really, really forgotten, but it does benefit 100% in particularly explosive sports, weight training type of sports, HIIT activities, any sport with a stop-go type of situation. The great thing about creatine is it's actually also really good for older people. Now, this is one thing that I'm seeing come out with pretty much a lot of the supplements that I'm going to talk about. The older that we get, as much as we hate to admit it, we actually need supplements more than what younger people do. So if I looked at it like this, and I thought about it like if you think about a walking cane, if you're able to walk and able-bodied and you use a walking cane, it's not really going to help what you do. But it's that's kind of the thing with supplements. A lot of the time, until you get to that older phase and you start to experience that decline in muscle, what they call muscle quality, and the ability to contract and all that kind of stuff, then us older people are way more, like, we're going to be benefited more even so than younger people with a lot of these supplements. And creatine is one of those where as you age, it not only helps your workout performance, it actually also helps your cognitive performance. So, keeps you on the ball, keeps your mind working and stuff like that. So creatine is something which I, again, had dropped off of my regime, but it's definitely come back on. And I've just got a little show and tell here, obviously International Protein being my brand. We use creolcalin, which what's different about creolcalin and normal creatine monohydrate. They are both creatine monohydrates, and that's what pretty much 90% of the research has been done on. There are many different forms of creatine AKG, creatine hydrochloride, that's just to name a few, creatine malate. Now, the idea as to why there's all those different types is because creatine is known for being a little bit tricky to absorb into the body, and that's hence why people tend to experience that upset stomach, and they talk about whether it's wasted and whether it's actually active when it's going in your body. So basically with creatine, you're trying to get it in and keep it in that form, so it'll break down in water basically to some nasty byproducts that aren't really that beneficial. So the idea with the creolcalin is that it's buffered up to a pH such that when it hits your stomach, it's able to pass through and go into the intestine for absorption whilst it's still in the creatine form. So the idea is you don't need to take as much to still get that same kind of benefit. Now, going back to that non-responder thing, I know when creatine first came out, I tried to use it. I was sponsored by Masashi at the time and got it all for free. Got a lot of water retention, but didn't really feel much more out of it other than that very, very first time I used it, even though I'd go off for like a 6-week cycle. I quite consistently find the creolcalin, it's that sort of subliminal. You don't feel like a big punch like what you do with a stim type of product, but you definitely feel that more fuller in the muscle and that ability to contract. So if you're looking at supplements, as I said, once you've taken care of your protein, if you're looking for something which has got so much science behind it and does actually work, then I would look for a creatine. Now, coming back to the aerobic work, so I talked about how it's good for more that explosive type of work. Now, now I'm just going to double check my notes that have not got these incorrect, but when creatine was actually combined with citrulline, I believe it was, then people actually got a really good aerobic boost as well. So it's like it either one on its own didn't really work. Sorry, beta-alanine on its own is not good for aerobic type of work, but when it was combined there, it actually benefited people who are doing aerobic type of work. So that's really interesting, that sometimes it's not the supplement on its own, but once you put it in combination with something else, it actually has a beneficial effect in that realm as well. So just summing up on creatine, yes, it's going to be good for all ages, but it is going to be more beneficial again for people who are older, and then people who are eating a low meat diet, people who are vegan diets, and again people who are doing absolute strength power hit type of training. So that's a really, really good one to go for. I won't talk a lot about glutamine because I do talk a lot about glutamine, and to me that's also a foundation supplement. Like, it's not a fancy one, it's one that often gets forgotten, but it's absolutely should be a staple in anyone's regime. Now, as far as performance, there's arguments that it's not really going to grow any extra muscle. I look at glutamine like it's the sacrificial lamb. It gets utilized as an energy source when you are low in that. So if you're wanting to spare other amino acids, glutamine is really, really good because it'll switch into glucose very readily and get burned up for energy, which can happen during your training session. If you are training very, very heavily, you absolutely need more glutamine. You cannot produce enough within your body to give you what you need. You do eat it in all of your foods, but that's all saying that when people are on just a regular kind of like living, they're eating. They're in a status quo, but as soon as you start to ramp up your training, particularly if you're prepping for competitions or doing intensive training, split bouts, more than 2 hours a day, then you are going to be burning up a lot more glutamine. And glutamine, as I said, is like the sacrificial lamb, and it kind of gets utilized in a lot of different areas. That's around sports performance. We won't even go into the benefits for gut health, because we have talked about that. But one thing which is really, really interesting about glutamine is that it actually converts to citrulline. which is one of the key ingredients in pre-workout. So that was something which I hadn't actually picked up on previously, but in both in the intestine and in the muscle, it's actually converting to citrulline, which is then obviously turning into your arginine for your pumps and for your blood flow. So there's a lot of really great reasons to use your glutamine. But as I said, I won't talk too much about glutamine because to me it's just one of the core. There's a lot of science behind it. It's been around for a long time. 60% of your muscle is made up of glutamine, but it's not necessarily going to make you grow muscle because, to grow muscle you need all of the essential amino acids, but it's definitely going to be a great supplement to use when you're, just trying to recover and have a good workout and stay generally healthy. So I wanted to kind of launch in, I suppose I'll talk about carnitine, because I briefly mentioned how that was good for endurance work. Now, that's actually one of my favourite supplements for many, many reasons. Number one, obviously, it is what allows you to burn fat. So fat for energy. So when you're doing a lot of cardio work and you're cutting up for a show and you're trying to use that body fat as an energy source, then carnitine is absolutely it's an energy-giving supplement because it's allowing you to actually burn that energy. So if you're not giving your body the carbs freely, like you're reducing, I'm not saying eliminate, I'm saying you're reducing your carbs because you're trying to feed, I guess, the workout, but you're not wanting extra to lay down as body fat. So there is going to come that point where you're needing, obviously, to release body fat. And if you can't burn it, you don't have the energy. So you are going to have that situation where your body needs the energy and it's going to pull it from the muscle instead of from the body fat if you don't have the carnitine there to allow your body to burn that fat for energy. So part of that is, why I find it such a great supplement. But just from a performance point of view, it does actually give you a great endurance. Some people say they find it hard to sleep on L-carnitine, even though it's not a stim, but it does have that energy promoting effect. Now, it's not really great if you're just going to do a really short-lived type of activity, but say, for example, you have a weight training session and you're going to go do cardio afterwards, or you're doing straight out like a cardio session, then you're going to get a really great benefit out of the carnitine. You're really going to notice that because it's just like your energy doesn't drop. You start off, you might feel a little bit tired to start off with, and you get to the end and you realize, like, hey, I'm not tired anymore. And that is 100% coming from the carnitine. So it is, as I said, it's touted as a fat burner, but I highly rate it as an actual performance supplement for people who are doing endurance type of activities. So, hey Bernadette, good to join us. Now, the pre-workout, I guess I'm itching to dive into that because it's such a broad category. And as I said, it comes back to what energy system you're using. Like if you are doing endurance sport, you're looking for maybe a different kind of mixture of products to if you're doing, some weight training and what it is that you might be looking for. So when it comes to your pre-workout, you really need to look at what is it that you're trying to achieve. So something like citrulline malate or citrulline is normally like the foundation ingredient of pretty much any pre-workout these days. Now, the reason for that, obviously, is that, citrulline does have a lot of research behind it now in terms of the ability of it to, basically improve the ability of your body to keep on working. So it delays fatigue. So obviously, if you fatigue at a certain point and you can go for longer without fatiguing, then obviously that's a benefit, particularly for people who are doing endurance type of sports. Sorry, my connection just went weird again. I stopped talking so people didn't miss anything there. So if you're doing strength type of sports and that type of thing as well, you can you can definitely improve that output of energy through your citrulline. Now I made a few little notes here. So it essentially it's working along the line of increasing the blood flow to the muscle. It converts to arginine. Now, studies have been done where they put arginine and citrulline together, and obviously they had a benefit of increasing Damn, my connection. Hey, Matt, long time no see. So the two together they work synergistically, and this is where a lot of the original pre-workouts always had arginine and always had citrulline, because essentially the idea is that you want to, get that arginine, which then obviously increase the nitric oxide, which increased the what they call the relaxation of the blood vessels, which allowed more blood to flow through, gave you more of a pump, and that's where it allowed your body to work harder. So I'm just going to check my notes here. Citrulline also helps to spare amino acids and maintain protein synthesis on a low protein diet. Now, this is really important because we're getting, we talk a lot about amino acids and we talk about proteins, and I just wasn't sure if people kind of understood that something like citrulline is what they call a metabolite of an amino acid. So it's not an amino acid that is required by the body to build muscle or to make any of the repairs to any of the other tissue in our body, but it is still classified as amino. This connection is really dodgy today, but it's not used in our metabolic processes in terms of like a food protein. So it has a role where it will convert to another type of amino acid and have a role in our energy systems, but not a role in our in building muscle. So it behaves a little bit differently. But what it can do is spare the amino acids that are needed to build muscle, and it will build that muscle. So other notes that I took, the thing with something like citrulline is it's not something like caffeine, where you take a single dose and you really notice it and boom, off you go. So things like citrulline and your beta-alanine and even your creatine, you need to take them over a period of time and this connection's really going off today. It allows you to build up in your system. So just a one-off dosage isn't really beneficial, but long-term usage of these type of ingredients is where you get the best benefit. So this actually comes back to the dosage side of things, where a lot of the time, people talk about, somewhere between 3 and 6 grams of citrulline being like the optimal dosage, but potentially you can take that split up into several dosages. Like, you don't necessarily have to take that all in one big hit, because it's not linked and related to, okay, you take it, you do the exercise, and then, so whilst they're in pre-workouts, it's not that you're getting that benefit like right there at that very second. So a lot of the pre-workouts that aren't loaded up with caffeine may take a few days to actually build up in your system and for you to actually get those results out. So keep that in mind when you're trying a new product, that you're not always expecting that you're going to feel the results immediately straight away. And sometimes if you do feel results like too immediately, it may be that it's just something like a caffeine which has been put in there to kind of give you the appearance that something's going on. A lot of the changes and a lot of the effects of a lot of the other really, really great sports supplements actually take time to work in your body. So just keep that in mind. So citrulline, again, is one of those products where it is really, really beneficial for older people. So younger people will get a benefit out of it because it will have that impact on, increasing their ability to work. But it's going to be more noticeable in an older person where we have that decline in the natural processes in our bodies. So once again, a lot of the time with supplements, people almost feel like, they're cheating when they take a supplement, or, you can get everything out of food and everything is meant to be natural and that. But I think you've got to bear in mind that some of the dosages that you actually need to get that benefit are more than what you're actually practically going to get out of food. And again, something like citrulline, it is in, things like watermelon, but you have to have quite a lot of that to get that. It is also in, meat products and things. So just, keep that in mind, that supplements, they aren't all bad. I think they sometimes have a bad reputation because they are often overhyped and over-marketed. But some of the ones which are like your key things, like your beta-alanines, your citrulines, your creatines, they've been around for like 15, 20 or more years now. And they have so many studies behind them, and they have studied them in all different kinds of applications, whether it be high intensity work, aerobic work, old people, young people. They've looked at a lot of different situations, and they find that they definitely have benefits and effects. So when you're looking for those products, make sure that they've got some of those in them, because they are absolutely wonderful. So I did make a few more notes to just to make sure I didn't forget anything. So the other thing with citrulline, which is really cool, is it actually was reported that it made things feel easier. Now, to me, that is half of what, where your fitness comes from. If something feels easier, you then push harder. And when it's, so that's where that adaptation comes, and that's where the muscle growth comes from, is not the direct relationship necessarily between the citrulline, because the citrulline cannot grow the muscle, but allowing you to work harder is really what that comes from. And that's the same thing with creatine. The creatine, a little different because it has actually been shown to help with the synthesis of muscle tissue, but a lot of the effect comes from the fact that you can work harder, you can work at a greater rate, or you can go heavier. And therefore, from that comes the adaptation and the muscle growth. So that's the really cool thing about that. There's been studies done with as little as like 1.2 grams of citrulline used per day, and that was beneficial. But as I said, they've kind of looked at it and said, well, okay, between 3 grams and 6 grams, which is quite a range, is definitely the level to take. Now, the other interesting thing was that a lot of the studies around endurance work is citrulline, just pure citrulline was used in those studies. And for a lot of the weight training, they looked particularly at citrulline malate. Now, as far as, the whole reason why malate, I guess, came about is because it's more soluble, it gets into the body supposedly easier. However, studies show that citrulline itself has no trouble at all getting absorbed into the body. So looking at it, if you're taking, citrulline malate, you have to take more of the physical citrulline malate to get that amount of citrulline. However, obviously the malate part has other roles in the energy cycle, but it's just interesting that a lot of the studies for resistance training and the improvements in resistance training were done on the malate version, and then obviously the endurance work, it was the citrulline itself. Now, from a formulating point of view, and this is just something which anyone who's had a pre-workout go hard on them will probably relate to this. Citrulline malate is one of the main causes for pre-workouts going solid in the jar, and as I said, I'm sure we've all experienced that. So beta-alanine and citrulline malate combine together, and they just love to go sticky. The citrulline itself doesn't do that. So from a formulator's point of view, if you can get the same benefit out of the citrulline as the citrulline malate, I would 100% be using that citrulline because the product is going to be a lot more stable. But yeah, it's a product that both endurance and weight trainers can use that and get really, really great benefits. Weight trainers only needed to take about 4.5 grams of citrulline. So I know a lot of those pre-workouts that have pure citrulline in them are definitely loaded up, probably a lot more than what you actually need. But anyhow, citrulline, definitely a really, really cool product to be putting, to be taking for, across the board if you're looking for performance enhancement in a natural form. Beta-alanine is my next favorite. So we've got creatine, citrulline, and the beta-alanine. And again, these were like the key ingredients that were found in all the really, really traditional old pre-workouts. Now, beta-alanine basically improves performance on exercise, which is longer than 60 seconds in duration, but not more than about 4 minutes. So beta-alanine is really one of those products which is really, really great for your weight training, resistance training, and HIIT training. It has, on its own, it doesn't have a lot of benefit for the aerobics. So whilst a lot of the pre-workouts will contain all, people who are using a pre-workout for aerobic activity, the beta-alanine, if it's on its own, isn't going to do so much. And sorry, it was actually the beta-alanine when they combined that with the creatine, which definitely gave a longer time to fatigue and a greater ability, or a longer time until the muscle fatigued and the person actually tapped out and couldn't exercise anymore. So that was very interesting that beta-alanine on its own didn't do that, but when they combined it with creatine, it did actually give an improved aerobic performance as well. So basically beta-alanine, the reason or how it works is it converts to carnitine in the body, and what that does is it buffers the hydrogen ions, or the acid that builds up in your muscle when you're breaking down all of that ATP in that that high intensity cycle in that very short period. So obviously, if up to 60 seconds it's not effective because you haven't built up enough lactic acid or enough of the hydrogen ions to cause your body to fail because of that. So if you're just doing powerlifting, 1 out rep, 3 reps, 5 reps, it's really not going to help you at all. But if you're doing, traditional set well, even in bodybuilding where you're doing just that 1 set, it's the fact that you don't just do 1 set, it's the fact that you come back and you do 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, and then you do a whole workout, which takes about an hour and a half. So it's in those later sets, like that 4th set, the next exercise, that's where you're going to get the most benefit out of the beta-alanine in your product. Now, beta-alanine is another one of those ingredients which, one off, you take it, you're not going to really feel a difference. It's something that you do need to take for about a 2, 3, 4 week period of time until you really get the true benefit out of that. Now, also in a lot of the studies, they talk about the overall dosage that was taken over that period of time. And again, we've come up with, 3.2 grams as being like the optimal dosage per day. However, the best way to take it is actually split up into about 5 dosages. So that's something which is, again, it becomes a kind of a conflict between what's practical, because it's really hard to remember to go and take something 5-6 times a day. And a lot of the time the pre-workouts just put that whole 3.2 grams or 3,200 milligrams into that 1 dosage, because then you've got it in 1 serve. You don't have to think about it again. But thinking about that realistically, it would be really good to probably take half of that before and then half of it after you've done your training, or at some other time of day. But that's a lot of the way how people get around, the potential upset stomach that you get from a lot of these type of supplements is by splitting up that dosage. So, it is a build-up effect. You don't have to take it all in one hit to get the benefit. So, theoretically, the timing of it before your workout isn't really critical. I think it's just convenient to put it into that matrix, and because you're taking those similar type of ingredients which all work together in a similar way to improve that workout performance and that power output, that it just makes sense to take it at that particular point in time. It's just interesting to note that you don't really have to do that. Other really cool things about beta-alanine that I don't want to miss out on, again, for us older people, is that they have anti-aging properties, and it's a great antioxidant. So therefore, again, it's trying to reverse some of the natural aging processes that happen, and it's been linked to improving what they call the muscle quality, which I guess is the firmness of the muscle and the ability of the muscle to contract. And that's something that for younger people, yes, it's still going to allow them to get more reps out, have a greater workout output, but it's definitely really going to show its benefits in people who are more like, even when they say older, is kind of that over 50 mark. So to me, it means I've got something to look forward to, that as I get older, there's a lot more reason to be taking these products, and it's not just like something that you do because you think it's going to do something. It actually does do something in older people. As what else I'm going to say, yeah, and again, in older people and in younger people, the beta-alanine has been shown to increase muscular endurance. So it's not a supplement, that's only working on, older people. It's something that, again, across the board, you're going to get that workout performance out of it. So if you're looking for a really good pre-workout, then I would be looking to make sure that you had, those key ingredients in there, because that those ones have been, really well tested by science and really well proven. As far as how you take them, I think, myself, I'd be looking more now to kind of splitting up my dosages and not feeling like I need to take it all at once, because particularly with beta-alanine, that's the one that gives you the itchiness. Some people use that as a judge of it actually working, but that's just one of the, I guess, like a side effect of it, and it doesn't really, you don't really need to have that to benefit what you're trying to do. Like that's just one of those things that you put up with. So if you can take it in smaller dosages, that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm standing on the other factory today, but I do keep losing everybody. So I have a little bit of a show and tell here, because obviously with pre-workouts, I've talked about, I guess, what I call the top 3 or the key ingredients, which are really going to, like, direct relationship, help you anti-fatigue, help your power output. The beta-alanine hasn't necessarily been shown to increase strength, but the ability to work more and more reps, obviously with that adaptation in time, then, you're showing muscle growth, and muscle growth is linked to strength. But with pre-workouts, probably the number one ingredient that we see in every pre-workout is some form of stim, and caffeine being that number one stim. Now, caffeine, again, it's very well researched, and I'm going to say that it's even actually been researched against common drugs to see how people's ability to perform when they're fatigued, like caffeine, hands down, is actually one of the most effective, even compared to pharmaceutical drugs. So it's a cheapie, it's cheap and cheerful, it's readily available, and it definitely does the trick. But obviously the flip side and the downside of caffeine is that it does have that kind of a crash, and it does have that tendency to also cause your heart to beat a lot faster. Now, it's one of those things where sometimes, like for me personally, sometimes it affects me, sometimes it doesn't. But definitely, it's that ingredient which, forces your brain to produce those catecholamines. I can never pronounce that properly, but basically it makes you nice and alert, tricks your body into thinking that you're not tired, and you can go off and do a really, really hard workout. So, we're all used to drinking coffee, and obviously a black coffee is, kind of can't beat it. But as I said, it shows up in pre-workouts, and I'm a huge fan of caffeine, but I'm a huge fan of it to a level. And the thing that I would say with a lot of the pre-workouts is to try to, I guess, be the next greatest thing and to outdo the next particular product. People start to put more and more caffeine in them. And obviously the effects of dehydration when you're trying to perform, do an event, like obviously you dehydrate your muscle, then your performance goes down. So you need to find that balance between enough to give you enough of a kick, but not so much that you're either disrupting your sleep patterns, because keeping in mind that when you sleep is when you're also recovering your ATP. You're flushing your brain of toxins. Like, there's so many things that happen balancing out hormones when you sleep that you don't want to be in a position of really disrupting your sleep. So you've got to be really mindful of how much caffeine you're taking in. And, again, 150 to 150 milligrams is plenty. Probably wouldn't go much above 350. Like, we put 350 in our Warhammer, which is like our... It's a really high stim product, and and I guess we're talking about age and the young. I'm going to say the young kids seem to love it. They probably have a better tolerance. As we get older, I believe that our tolerance to, and I guess lack of sleep and keeping our brain chemistry in balance is a lot more critical. So I kind of have that product, and I definitely I leave it to the younger guys to take that, because I think too long on something which is continually forcing your body to sort of work in that I guess that artificially stressed state, like you're stressed but you don't think that you're stressed, is different to not being stressed. So that's really, really important differentiation there. So caffeine, it is a great tool for, releasing the body fat, to be used as an energy source. Team that up with some carnitine to actually go on. Then you have a great combination there, but you do just have to be mindful of how much that you're taking. Now, with caffeine, there's, the critical difference between like synthetic caffeine, which is your caffeine anhydrous, and a natural caffeine, which is, coming from your green coffee or your guarana. So when that coffee hasn't been roasted, it's still sitting in what they call a bound form, which means it releases into your body more slowly. So when you're taking it in that pure, either caffeine from, roasted coffee, which is your normal black coffee, or whether you're taking it from an anhydrous, synthetic form of caffeine, that's unbound. So it's free, it hits your body all in one go. And then, of course, it has its, quite a short lifespan, and that's, that causes you to have that crash, or, obviously the other effect where you need to take more, just to get that same effect. So caffeine is one of those things where you just got to be really, really mindful of the time that you take it, and as I said, age, because as you get older, I just believe that you get more and more sensitive to a lot of these things, particularly if you've taken them over a lifetime. So when you're checking out your pre-workout, I would definitely say as we get older to really be mindful whether it's coming from a natural caffeine source like a green coffee or a guarana versus a synthetic source, and then obviously the ultimate level of it that's in it, because as I said, you can kind of you can really overdose yourself and cause yourself to be kind of too wired to actually concentrate and to actually focus on your set if you're too jittery. So that's the caffeine on its own. Now, there's a whole lot of really cool ingredients coming out now. People are probably familiar with things like teocrine, dynamine. There's a company called Compound Solutions, and they are really doing some pretty high-powered research into sports performance-based ingredients. And I think I will spend another day talking about that they have coming out. And the teocrine I will talk about in particular, because this is something that I have used quite a lot. And as far as, you know, giving you like a mental clarity and that lack of fatigue and that ability to kind of focus in on things, then it is a absolutely phenomenal ingredient, and it's very, very clean. So when I say clean, a lot of the supplements which give you that buzz or give you that hype up, like your caffeine, they tend to, when they drop you down, they leave you feeling very, very ratty, very scratchy, like you kind of want to yell at somebody, or you know, you're a little bit irritable. Whereas something like the Creatine, it just gives you that real ability to get that clear focus for, and I hate to say this, up to about a 10-hour period, which is maybe a little bit too long, because sometimes you just do actually want to go to sleep. And to me, the thing with that is, it's great when you're working out, but I guess the function of it goes far beyond just a sports supplement, because you think about it. Once you step outside of the physiological change to your body to allow you to work harder, it then becomes like the mental effect, and it becomes that thing of, you know, you're able to focus on the workout, or you're able to push through a pain barrier, or you're able to, you know, sort of focus in and do that work. And so the effects that come out of that are from your ability to focus more and push harder, rather than to have the physiological change necessarily on your body. So I guess that's where I want to pull that differentiation, and why then that just, you know, it flows into so many other areas of not only sport, but I guess, you know, students who are trying to study, or again, older people who have that decline in mental capacity. You know, those type of applications are actually quite interesting. But in terms of the sports application, it's really about allowing you to focus, you know, giving you that ability to really, really hone in on your workout, and without having the effect of, you know, causing your heart rate to go up and you to feel kind of jittery. So that's why I think Creatine is actually a very, very you know, interesting ingredient to watch out for. It is expensive, and I think that's the thing where I see with a lot of the pre-workouts is that they may not be cheaper on the shelf, but I know that they're cheaper to make. Are some of the ones which are purely based around a really high stim, just to kind of give you that, you know, like high caffeine, and that pretty much does, like, you think it's doing everything because it has that, and it can kind of, you know, be a little bit harsh on your system long term to use those kind of things. And I definitely do recommend that people cycle those, and really be mindful of what else is in it, because as I said, it's a really, really complex area, and you're obviously trying to improve performance, but sometimes by putting things in which then, you know, cause that lack of sleep, or cause you to dehydrate, or cause you to not be focused or not be able to focus, can actually be counterproductive, because you can actually like run yourself down and end up in a situation of overtraining, over fatigue, and those kind of situations which you really don't want to have. So when I'm looking at a pre-workout, I'm definitely looking for something which actually supports my ability to work harder, and then also supports it with things like you know, your amino acids to give energy whilst you're training, so that you're not actually catabolizing your own muscle and things like that. So when you're you know, when you're trying to pick a pre-workout, definitely for the younger people who like that kind of effect, and I guess I'm going to go there and say a lot of the high stim pre-workouts are mimicking I guess amphetamines and you know, those kind of mind altering drugs and things like that, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I'm old school, and back in the day we didn't need those kind of things to train. As I said, a little bit of coffee, and then, you know, getting into things like your beta-alanines and your creatines are actually, you know, going to enhance your performance. The rest of a lot of these products are just, yeah, I believe that they're masking, you know, that they're giving motivation to people, rather than, I guess, the motivation coming from within. And long term, I don't necessarily believe that they are the best kind of products to be using. A lot of the acidity in them is very high, which again attacks the stomach mucosa, and we are seeing a lot of people with more distress on their digestive tract from the use of these, you know, pretty acidic kind of products. So again, looking for something which has maybe got a more natural source of you know, the caffeine, something like your Creatine, which again is coming from a particular kind of tea. It's a cousin of caffeine. Things like your theobroma, which again are coming from your cocoa. All of these kind of products are all basically in there, you know, giving your brain an like mood elevation, giving you the motivation to train, tricking your body into feeling like they're not tired, and that's generally why they've been put into a pre-work. The very early pre-workouts were more just about the ingredients which actually helped your performance physically. But nowadays, they're being coupled up with ingredients which are also going to help you to motivate you, basically, and that's kind of where it also falls into the nootropics and things like that. So that's DIM kind of pre-workout, and I've really just touched the surface, and I just realized, as I'm talking, how deep we really need to. We will go a little bit. We will go into that on another day, because I'm just looking at the time and I realise, like I say, I've only covered like this tiny little bit on sports supplements. The other part of sports supplements, which I will talk about, is we talk about pumps, we talk about vasodilation. So we're looking at ingredients which, are arginine based, things like your nitrosagine. Again, things like your theobroma, which again are helping with that, increasing the blood flow. And all of those ingredients do have a certain amount of research behind them, and are very, very beneficial in helping to improve performance. Obviously, the more blood flow you can get, the more nutrients you get. Particularly, you can get more oxygen to your working muscle, and that allows people to work longer. And so that type of product is a whole other category that's coming out, where people also want to feel that actual pump, because a lot of the time, the what you do in the gym is so mental. Like if you're feeling flat and you can't get a great pump, then you don't necessarily feel like you're having a really good workout. So a lot of people like to have ingredients that give it that kind of pump feel. And I will talk a little bit about our Brutal Pump, which again, this is one of my favorite products that International Protein does, is because it's a stim-free product, and it's also giving anti-fatigue. So in the way that caffeine gives anti-fatigue, it has an ingredient in here called fatigue fighter, which is actually some peptides. So it's basically a natural amino acid. And again, it kind of tricks your body into feeling like it's not fatigued, but it works in a different way to what what the caffeine does, in that it's working on the amino acids in the brain, which cause you to not feel fatigued. Now, I had the opportunity to use the product as an ingredient right before we put it into the product, and I was getting ready for one of my competitions, and it absolutely phenomenal in the way that the workouts that I had, just the pump that I felt and the energy that I felt from that ingredient. So I was very, very impressed, hence why we put it into our into Brutal Pump. But I'll just kind of break down what we've tried to do with Brutal Pump. So this product is actually really good for endurance athletes as well as weight trainers. And the reason why it's obviously good for the endurance athletes, because it's not going to have that, jittery stim crash. I'm probably not a huge fan of the really high stim pre-workouts for people who are doing in aerobic work. I think a small amount of caffeine is kind of cool, but I just think that the dehydration impact and also that kind of jitteriness is not great for people doing endurance. So Sharon, we do sell. I'll put a link to our website. We do sell all over the world online. We don't sell direct in Australia. We go through the stores, but definitely in South Africa, I can get them across to you. It will be charged in US dollars, but yeah, they are all available online. But what we've done is we have a vasodilation and pump, which is basically nitrosagine, which is the arginine, and again, arginine is very, very critical in getting that vasodilation. We talked about how the citrulline converts to arginine. But this is a special type with inositol, which prolongs the activity of the arginine. Because one of the problems with arginine is that it's a very rate limiting reaction, and it kind of like has a little burst, and then you can't just keep on putting more arginine in to keep getting more and more effect. We have the Actinos, which is another peptide product, which again it got made famous years ago in one of the pre-workouts, and I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it's been around for a really long time, and it's basically a nitric oxide activator. So it again produces more nitric oxide to get that blood flow happening. We then have a hydration matrix. So we have a glycerol product which basically draws the water into the muscle, and which is again why it's really, really great for people doing endurance work, because you've got like muscle dehydration is one of the reasons why people will fatigue and fail to work. And so we have that. We also have obviously sodium, potassium, magnesium, the basic electrolytes. And now that's another really cool thing during obviously during endurance workout, it's probably more important than in weight training. However, the big guys in particular, when they weight train, they sweat so much, they have so much muscle mass that you don't realize how much they can lose and how much that actually can affect their ability to keep on contracting. And also then the cramping that comes afterwards when they're in that recovery phase. So having a product that has, you know, some electrolytes with it is really, really important. And again, without the caffeine, you're not going to be kind of fighting where, you know, you've got caffeine dropping your water out. This is allowing you to stay hydrated and work really well. And then obviously on the performance side, we have obviously the PEP form that I talked about, which is the fatigue fighter, which, you know, is a amino acids, you know, that tell your brain, I am not tired, and allows you to keep on working. It also gave me a really great pump, which, you know, that was, you know, I took it without other pump ingredients to test it out, and I found that was one of the things I noticed. We obviously have our Crealkaline creatine monohydrate in here for all the reasons I talked about at the start. Taurine, which also helps with hydration. Tyrosine, which I didn't talk about a lot, but I will briefly talk about. So tyrosine, basically, much like your caffeines and that, is another product which keeps you mentally alert by releasing those catecholamines. Now, there is a little bit of, I guess, debate as to whether or not tyrosine works if you're not tired. But say, for example, you're quite fatigued, so, you know, mentally fatigued, or you haven't slept, or that kind of thing, then the tyrosine does actually increase its output to stimulate you and basically get you up and keep you more alert. It's been well tested, and you know, it can give about a 3-hour period for people who are really, really tired. However, I will say that I think someone asked me about, like, you know, combat sports and things like that. So apparently, according to researchers, that's only interesting to people who do combat and stuff like that. But I think anyone who has a full-time job, trying to train, trying to fit everything in, then anything that's going to, you know, give you that little bit of an edge and keep you mentally able to work, mentally able to focus, you know, then that's going to be a really, really great benefit. So, you know, I link everything back, you know, research is often done in other areas, but you link it back to sport. And I think sometimes people underestimate what it's actually like to prep for a comp when you're dead tired. You have to focus at work all day, and you know, then you try to do your workout. And and a lot of the time when you're training really heavy, if you can't get that focus and you can't, you know, really concentrate, then you're not going to be able to lift the weight that you really need to. Hence why I think that you know, having something to kind of keep you mentally awake is really important. And then we also put some branched chain amino acids in there. So I'm not going to talk about the branched chains today, because this definitely needs a part 2 and probably a part 3. But essentially, you know, when you're working out, your branched chains are the main amino acids that gets consumed as muscle fuel. So it's a really great idea to put those into a pre-workout, because you need to have, you know, especially if you are working harder, and, you know, that's the whole point of taking that pre-workout. You want to have something that supports that, so that you're not forcing your body to give up its own amino acids to do that. So, you know, rather than necessarily taking a separate branched chain product, which you can do, we put it into the pre-workout, so it's kind of like an all-in-one. But yeah, that Brutal Pump is a very cool product, and again, I recommend it for older people and endurance athletes, as well as people who are doing, you know, HIIT work, strength training, and those kind of things, because it does cover off on, you know, all bases: hydration, muscle function, and you know, and the mental performance side of it as well. But I am going to wind it up, just because I've gone on for a long time, and I have literally covered like the top. I've just scratched the surface on sports supplements. So I would love it if anyone were to drop any questions below. I'm going to go back and recheck that question that had come through before, and just, yeah, any questions, because as I said, the subject's so huge. I haven't really even covered off on amino acids. I didn't cover off on post-workout, you know, intra-workout. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that. So thank you everybody for watching. I will pick this up next week. We'll probably do part 2 next week. Everyone have a really great Sunday.